How are you guys?
You got the microphone?
Did I? Where is the microphone? Oh, it's right here. Okay. Shall we switch sides?
Yes, let's switch.
Let's do that.
I just want to start by...
Don't forget your water, though.
That's true. We're here for a while.
Okay.
Where does this feeling come from?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you. Thanks for coming, and thank you for inviting me. It's just awesome. I've actually wanted to come to Iceland for a long time. I travel a lot, but for whatever reason, I've never had the opportunity to come here. And I've been here barely 24 hours, and I'm absolutely loving it so far. Maybe a little bit windy and cold, but I'll get over it very, very quickly. Yeah. I love the wind, but the rain was, a little much today. So anyway, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it has been a theory in culture for a while. And as you said, Wild at Heart is obviously the most obvious of them all. But the Lynchian forums quite regularly sort of pop up with just a little thing here and a little thing there, and it's always been sort of hovering. Enough, in fact, that when I started contacting some of the contributors who are the head of those chapters now, and some of the other people who unfortunately are not in the film that I wanted to include, I didn't really need to say much. I said, hey, I'm making this film. It's about David Lynch, The Wizard of Oz, and they all went, oh, well, of course, and so yeah, I think it's one of those things that's been around, but I quite frankly didn't know. I mean, I committed to making this film not exactly knowing how deep I would be able to go. And in retrospect now, I think I wasn't necessarily certain that I would actually end up having a feature. But, I guess intuitively I thought, I have to go there and I have to see. And we certainly dug a lot deeper than we thought we were going to.
Yeah, it seems like Wizard of Oz is a really interesting lens to just focus on a lot of cinema, as you approach in the film. So these chapters, can you talk a little bit about the structure of the film? What made you decide upon having these different storytellers, and like where you picked them from, and why did you choose these people, and maybe say a little bit about those people you just mentioned that didn't relate to the film? I'm assuming Lynch is going to be maybe one of those people.
Yeah, Lynch was the first person I approached. I was pretty sure that he wasn't going to do it because he doesn't, as we know, he doesn't like to talk about his films. So no big surprise there, but he was very nice. I mean, his response was the way that he declined. He said, "I need to keep my eye on the donut." So, all right. Fine. Thanks, David. I'll tell you when I have a film,
Has he seen it, do you know?
No, not that I know of. We invited him to the premiere in Tribeca, and he didn't go. I don't think he goes out of his house much. I'm not really surprised because my contact to him was John Nguyen, who was one of the directors of The Art Life, which is, I don't know if you guys have seen it, it's a documentary on David Lynch's mostly painting career. When that film premiered in Venice, David Lynch didn't even, and even though he fully participated in the film, he didn't even go. So I certainly had no illusions that he would show up. But we're showing the film on Coronado Island, which is just south of San Diego, in about a month or a month and a half. And his sister is connected to that festival. She'll be there. So perhaps his sister will say, hey, I don't know. Look, if he wants to see it, he has my email address. He knows where to reach me. I'm happy to send him a link, but until then, it's fine, As for the other people, I've been making films about cinema now for a long time. This is, in fact, my 10th feature. And so, I've over the years, you build a pretty substantial Rolodex, and people like to geek out about movies. Filmmakers like to geek out about movies. You know, I think they know that when we get together, we're going to have like a 3.5-hour interview. So that's usually how it goes. So it's just a pure sort of love of cinema. And all these people are, you know, they're not just great filmmakers, but they're, you know, hardcore, amazing cinephiles. So it's just a pleasure, you know, to do that. So part of it was, you know, reaching out to people who made sense to me. But I really wanted to find people who were going to be completely sort of 100%, you know, all in on the idea. There we go. now I glow, right? It glows right here, right? Yeah. But yeah, so to me it was, it's always, one, it's intuitive, two, it's serendipitous. I'm a big believer in, you know, if somebody says yes, it's for a reason. If somebody says no, it's for a reason. When somebody says no, I don't usually take their no for an answer. I keep chasing, and I keep chasing up to a point where clearly it's not going to work. And if it doesn't work, no matter how heartbreaking it is, then it's a no. Or if it doesn't work because of scheduling, you know, we almost hired Guy Madden in the film, actually, and he would have been amazing. He said yes, and then ultimately he said no, and I tried to twist his arm, and he stayed a no. He just didn't feel like he, you know, wanted to do it, which is a shame because he wanted to focus on the Eraserhead. That would have been really, really cool. But you know, it is what it is. And ultimately what was really so cool is that there was a structure that emerged from those 6 chapters and sort of this dramatic progression leading up to this larger thesis, which is really about the, you know, the impact of influence and inspiration on the creative process, which is why, you know, there's this sort of sweeping, you know, montage of filmmakers, you know, at the very end, which I think is a really beautiful way to end the film, and that's, you know, thanks to David Lowery. So the chapters, even though these different contributors were not aware of each other's participation within the context of the film, they worked together in a really beautiful way, and the order of those chapters became very evident very quickly as the film was progressing.
Yeah, it really works well, and it gives such a personal touch to the film to have everyone kind of talking from their own experience. I want to open it up to anyone who might have some questions.
Yeah.
I have to know, how long did it take you to get approval for all those clips? So many clips, I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah. So the question is approval. So there's no approval. It's what we call fair use. So the fair use process, you know, my producer could be doing a masterclass on this. It's, you know, we've been working with fair use now for many years, since The People versus George Lucas, which came out in 2010. So it's a very thorough, very dedicated, very intense legal process. You essentially have to have every single clip and the usage and the length to the frame approved by, is this working still? It is, okay. You have to get it approved by lawyers who specialize in that, attorneys who specialize in that. So there's a log that is extraordinarily intense because you have to log every single clip to the frame. And you know, you have multiple times of review and you go back and forth. You know, fair use is fairly complicated, but it's you know, the best way that I can explain it, it's very similar to rights of quotation if you're writing a book. So you know, there has to be a very specific purpose to each clip. There's also such a thing as transformative fair use. And so it gets, you know, for a film like this one that deals with Lynch, who is not a straightforward filmmaker, it gets intense really quickly. And we doubled our fair use budget just by having so many conversations with our attorneys on this. You know, it's a fun process. It's really interesting, But it's also a process that is very, and I think it's important to say this, that is extremely respectful of copyright. You know, it's not, you're not just taking clips to B-roll or because you want to. You know, many times, you know, I've been told, no, you can't use this, or you have to shorten this, or you have to use this in a different context or whatever. So it becomes a collaborative, you know, process with the attorneys. And, but, you know, I'm a big believer also in, I like to have restrictions. I like to have some pushback. And, you know, my editor and I, who, you know, we work very closely on this film, you know, I told him from day one, I said, look, we're going to have some pushbacks from the attorneys. There's things that we really want to use that we can't use. And I said, you know, I want us to be of the mind that if there's this thing that we absolutely cannot have, then there has to be, you know, a better solution out there. So, you know, like, we have to be optimistic about this. It's not like, oh my gosh, they're trying to kill our film. It's they're trying to, one, to protect our film, and two, you know, there has to be something better out there. And quite frankly, everything that we didn't have, that we had to replace, we always found better replacements. So that's part of the process.
As a follow-up, just on the editing process and
Yeah.
all of the kind of beautiful, harmonious framing that goes on throughout the film.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about just finding these frames? Are you so well versed in the Wizard of Oz that you can watch a film and just kind of pick them up?
Well, you know, it's interesting because, you know, many people refer to me as a, you know, film historian. Like, I'm not a film historian. I'll flat out say it. I love obviously film history. I love to geek out. I'll watch a lot of classic films. But I connect the dots visually. You know, like, I will watch something that, you know, I'll probably use 10 years later in a film. You know, like, I remember images, for whatever reason, connect images in a particular way. And so I think that's what I do. But it's also, you know, I'm interested in so many things, you know, but I'm interested in obviously in the mysteries of influence, of connections, of, you know, I mean, hopefully Lynch does not provide any answers. Hopefully it opens more doors to more mysteries. And not just for Lynch and Oz, but also for other filmmakers and the way that we work. You know, this idea that any artist gets so profoundly impressed. I mean, when we grow up, there are a handful of works, whether they're paintings or comic books or movies, that leave this lasting impression on us. That, you know, and we can never really escape those works. But that's not a limiting thing. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, Fellini, you know, once said, I keep making the same movie over and over again. You know, Andrew Wyeth kept painting the same hill over and over and over again. And so that's why this idea that David Lowery brought up of digging, you know, that the more you dig into this thing, the more you lean into this one idea, into this one thing, the more you know, it's not restricting, it's not limiting. It's multi-layered, and there is no bottom to it. And I think that's very true.
And very Lynchian.
Yeah.
Catching the big fish and going deep. And,
Well.
There's a lot of elements in the way you almost frame the film as a dream, as a part of
Yep.
the film, the subconscious.
Yeah. Well, that's.
There's a lot of Lynchian elements to your own.
Well, that's the other thing is, and I'm glad you're mentioning that, because the whole sort of construct of the film is actually transcendental meditation. You go through the green curtains, you go deep, you get through the red curtains, and then you go deeper and deeper, and then you come out and you go back into the real world, you know, as David Lynch, asleep or sleeping in that clip, says you go way out and then you come back home. So that's the mantra of David Lynch, sort of coming out of a state of transcendental meditation, and we're coming out of the curtains, back into the theater, and hopefully I brought you back, guys, you back safely home here in Iceland. We are in Reykjavik now, are we? Or are we? Yeah.
Yeah, so you can obviously tell that this is you can see Lynch's fingerprints over your film, as you can see
Yeah, sure.
over his films, and you can sense his spirit in this, even though you don't have a direct interview with him or anything like that.
It is what it is. I love the fact actually that he is more of the man behind the curtain.
Absolutely.
In a way.
Perfectly.
It does. That's what he is. Yeah.
Yes. Anybody else has a question? No?
I really enjoyed that you had the interview subjects speak onto the camera. I was wondering if that was initially your plan with it, or if you decided that in post-production.
Yeah. You said to not have them on camera. Is that? Yeah. So, this is a movie that came out of the pandemic. Let's be honest. So that's the first thing. I was actually working. I usually work on two films at the same time. There's another one that we were working on. It's called The Taking, and it's about specifically John Ford and Monument Valley. And same thing. It was also purely audio interviews. So So we knew that we wouldn't have the opportunity to be in the same space. So that was the commitment. Of course, it makes fair use that much trickier because I've made a number of films. Hopefully, you'll see a couple of them. 1752, which is the one about the psycho shower scene, where we do have people on camera. It's an unusual use of people in a documentary. That's all I will say. But at least we had the luxury to cut to them at any given time. This is, this was a lot harder on that front. So that's really the main reason. And I really like that process, I have to say. Now that I've made two films like this, I'm working on another one right now that will be also like that on Vertigo. And I'll do more, but I'm also missing the process. I'm also finishing a film on William Shatner, which is a one-on-one right now with William Shatner. So he will be on camera a lot, just because he's William Shatner, He has to be on camera. But yeah, I enjoy both processes for different reasons. We'll go, here? Here? Okay.
So David Lynch has his Wizard of Oz, as we thoroughly know now. What's your Wizard of Oz?
Well, I just mentioned it. It's Vertigo. Vertigo is. I've been really obsessed with that film since I was 5, 6 years old. I remember watching it very, very young, and the final scene, I've come to realize actually resonates with me with sort of a lot of my deepest fears and anxieties, and I started realizing that because for years I've been wanting to make a film about vertigo but couldn't quite find the angle, and I've just come to terms with the fact that for me to really make a film about vertigo, I have to dig into the sort of the roots of my cinephilia and how my cinephilia is linked to a lot of fears and anxieties that I have. So that's actually the first film that I'm going to narrate full on, and it's called The Fall, and it's about very specifically 57 frames of vertigo, but that's all I'm going to say for now. But so I'm that film. I don't know. I have no words for it. I just, that and Blade Runner, and there's some connections I think between the two as well. There's an averted fall in Blade Runner.
You have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Right now there's a big phenomenon online with people sort of using films to make their own criticism, using excerpts from films, and giving a voiceover. It's often called the essay film, but it refers to a variety of different approaches to this.
Yep.
Some poetical, some rather analytical. I'm wondering if you've got any kind of relationship with people that do that, or if you've thought about yourself as an essayist or a film critic for that matter.
No, I don't consider myself a film critic, certainly not. I guess you could say maybe as essayist, I don't know. I like to work with long form. I mean, I'm doing some stuff I've done some stuff for Criterion, short form. I have another one that's going to be coming out on the I don't know do you have the Criterion channel here in Iceland? No. Even with a VPN?
You can do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Am I not
And
supposed to
even,
say that?
yeah, and even Criterion Blu-rays and stuff, they are all locked on the United States region. So
Well, but you get a multi-zone player.
you have to
Come on, guys. We can talk about that. Yeah, so I don't know. I like to work in the feature format. I think it's important for those films to be theatrical experiences. I think they have to be cinematic. So the sound design, the score, to me are very important, because I think if anything, I look at my work as hopefully creating a little bit of a bridge between film studies or cinema studies, which I think a lot of people feel could be a little bit daunting or intimidating or academic, and then the general public. I mean, nothing makes me happier than people who come to watch my films. Like, for instance, when I was touring with 7852, I would always ask the audience, before the movie starts, hey, does anybody here never watched Psycho? And there's always a couple of hands, very tentative, and I'm like, that's awesome, and then, to me, what's remarkable about this is that these are people who are coming to watch a film about a scene of a film that came out 60 years ago that they haven't watched. I mean, if that doesn't say anything about, the impact of Alfred Hitchcock, the impact of Psycho, I don't know what does. I mean, it's unreal just to think about it this way. And then, of course, my next sort of follow-up question is always, okay, well, so you haven't seen Psycho. So you haven't seen the shower scene? No. But can you, if I tell you shower scene, you know what that is? Yeah. Can you hear the score? Yes. I mean, wow, And so if I look back, I think, at, the body of work that I have now, if anything, is like I make films about films, scenes, sequences, moments in cinema that have transcended the medium of film to become cultural events. And I'm very, I think, interested and probably obsessed about those films, of which there are very, very few, that have seeped into culture in a way that I think you could easily say have shaped our pop culture globally. And those are films that are of extraordinary importance because they have a lot to say about who we are.
More questions? Yes. Go.
I'm just curious about how this started. What was the spark to make this thing, and then eventually how did it come together? Is it mostly, did you have like a sort of an outline ready before the interviews? Did it all happen in the interviews in the editing room?
Okay. What's really strange, and this is not the first time it happens, whether it's this film or 7852 or The People vs. George Lucas, I absolutely cannot tell you when was the first time that I thought, I want to make this film. I just know that at some point, for whatever reason, it's something that must have sort of kept knocking at the back of my head until I know that I talked to my producer about it. Carrie knows that when I say we're making this film, we're making this film. And, but it's weird, I feel like my films sort of organically, one leads to the next, I don't try not to think too much about that. It arises from a passion, and sometimes the moment is right or it's not, I mean, I've been wanting to make a film about Lynch for a long time. It just wasn't quite right. You don't just make any film about Lynch. You don't just make any film about Hitchcock. You don't just make any film about any of those films or filmmakers. There really has to be a very specific angle, So sorry, that wasn't a very helpful answer. The answer is I don't know. As far as the process, it was actually quite unique for this particular film. It was a multi-step process. The first step was obviously getting them to commit. And then what I told them is the first step is we're going to get on the phone and do what I call a jazz interview, in the sense that we're going to riff on Lynch and Oz, not really knowing where we're going to go. So of course I have questions, but I think the true skill of the interviewer is not to be prepared to ask questions, but it's to understand what the person wants to tell you, where they want to go, even though they themselves do not know where they want to take you. So you have to pay, once you've asked a couple of questions, all you have to do is follow, truly. And so these particular interviews, we recorded on an iPhone at first. I think the shortest one was 90 minutes, the longest like 3.5 hours. And again, at one point in the interview, there's, and again, it's truly intuitive. I feel like, okay, I've got enough here material to build a chapter. So, let's hang up and I'll get back to you. So I hang up. We've got 2 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna just finish. I got you. I got your back, don't worry. So I hang up the phone and transcribe the interview. And then with the transcript, I write the script for what I think their thesis is. And then send that to them. We go back and forth, make some cuts, then it becomes collaborative. They make changes, I make changes. And then when we're happy with the voiceover, then I send them to a recording studio to re-record their voiceover, and that's what you have in the film. Yeah.
All right, we are out of time, but I will remind you that Alexandre will be at other screenings and Q&As for
Yep.
the second film, and as well as a masterclass, I believe.
Well, there's the 1752, there's Dock of the Dead, which is an oldie, and then a couple of short films, and then a masterclass tomorrow. Yeah.
So just keep an eye out for it at the festival, and final
Yeah.
round of applause.
Thank you.